The lights dimmed across the vast studio of Pilipinas Got Talent, the crowd humming with anticipation. The air was heavy with excitement, but also with curiosity. Backstage, a young man stood silently, holding an old guitar that looked as if it had witnessed decades of stories. His name was Arnel Aguilar, a name that no one recognized yet. But the truth behind that name was something that would shake not just the audience, but the entire world of music. The host's voice boomed through the arena. Next up, we have a young man from the province of Pampanga who says he's been inspired by one of the greatest Filipino icons of all time, Freddie Aguilar. The mention of Freddie's name made a few people in the audience smile, others whisper. Freddie Aguilar, the legend behind the global hit, Anak, was a national treasure. His songs told stories of pain, love, and redemption, melodies that transcended borders. But what no one knew was that his legacy was about to come alive again, through the bloodline he never publicly revealed. Arnel walked slowly onto the stage. He wasn't dressed like the usual performers. No flashy suit, no shiny shoes. Just a plain white shirt, torn jeans, and the same old wooden guitar. The judges looked at him with curiosity. One of them smiled, another leaned forward. Simon Cowell, sitting in as a special guest judge that season, crossed his arms and studied the young man carefully. The host asked, "What's your name?" "Arnel," he said softly. "Arnel Aguilar." The moment the surname was spoken, there was a soft murmur among the audience. One of the judges raised an eyebrow. "Aguilar, any relation to Freddie Aguilar?" Arnel hesitated for a moment. His eyes glistened, as if he was about to say something he'd been holding in for years. "He's my father," Arnel replied quietly. The crowd gasped. Even Simon's usual calm demeanor shifted. He leaned slightly forward, a hint of disbelief crossing his face. The camera zoomed in on Arnel's trembling hands, gripping the neck of the guitar. The host spoke again, his tone curious. "Wait, you mean the Freddie Aguilar? The legend?" Arnel nodded, swallowing hard. "Yes, but he doesn't know me." The arena fell into silence. You could hear the tension in the air, the collective heartbeat of thousands of people waiting for an explanation. Simon broke the silence. "That's quite a revelation, Arnel. So, you're saying you're Freddie Aguilar's son, but he doesn't know?" "Yes," Arnel said, his voice shaking slightly. "My mother told me when I was 12. She said she met him in Manila when he was still performing at the folk houses. They went their separate ways before she knew she was pregnant. She never told him. She passed away 3 years ago. And since then, I've been trying to find a way to reach him, not through fame, not through money, but through the only thing that connects us. Music." Simon looked at the young man with deep interest now. The audience was hanging on every word. Some looked emotional already. This wasn't a typical talent show story. This was something raw, real, and deeply human. The host smiled softly. "So, what will you be singing for us tonight, Arnel?" Arnel took a deep breath, looking down at his guitar. "A song my mother and I used to sing when I was little. It's called Anak. But tonight, I'll sing it my way." The crowd applauded gently. The judges nodded, intrigued. Simon gave a small wave of his hand, signaling for him to begin. The first chord rang through the silent stage, a soft, almost haunting sound. It wasn't just the melody of Anak they were hearing, it was something else, something more fragile and emotional. Arnel's voice came through, rough at first, then clear, trembling with emotion. "When you were born into this world, your mom and dad saw a dream fulfilled." The audience listened in complete stillness. There was a raw power in his tone, not the trained perfection of a professional singer, but the soul of someone who had lived through every word he sang. Arnel's version was slower, deeper. His guitar gently wept with him. The lights turned golden, reflecting on his tear-streaked face. Simon Cowell, known for his critical eye and harsh standards, was motionless. His face softened as the words echoed around the hall. "Through your life, you'll face struggles and pain, but remember, love will always remain." Halfway through, Arnel's voice cracked. He paused for a brief second, tears falling from his eyes. But the audience didn't mind, they felt it too. Some in the crowd were crying quietly. Even the other judges had watery eyes. Simon leaned toward his microphone. "Take your time," he said softly, breaking his usual tone of authority. "We're with you." Arnel smiled faintly, nodded, and continued. His voice grew stronger, more powerful with each word. The song became more than a performance, it became a letter to his father, carried through every note, every trembling chord. As he reached the final verse, the entire audience stood up. His voice soared, echoing through the hall like a confession, like a soul reaching out across time. Anak, wherever you may be, I hope you can forgive me. He ended with his head bowed. The last note lingered, then faded into silence. For a few long seconds, no one moved. Then suddenly, the hall erupted in thunderous applause. The crowd rose to their feet, cheering and crying at the same time. The judges were on their feet too, clapping, wiping away tears. Simon Cowell was still sitting, stunned, eyes fixed on Arnel. He took a deep breath and slowly stood up, clapping his hands deliberately. His face showed a rare emotion, not judgment, not critique, but awe. He leaned toward his mic again. Arnel, Simon began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. I've heard thousands of singers in my life. Some technically perfect, some with voices that could fill arenas. But what you just did, he paused. That was something else. That was the most honest performance I've seen in years. The crowd roared. Simon continued, you didn't just sing. You spoke to everyone here, to every child who ever wanted to be seen, to every parent who ever lost touch with their child. You sang like a man reaching out through time. And I think, if Freddie Aguilar is watching this right now, and I'm sure he is, he's going to know who you are. Arnel stood still, trying to hold back his tears. One of the local judges wiped her eyes and said, Arnel, that was not a performance. That was a son calling out to his father through music. And I believe your message was heard. The audience chanted his name. Arnel, Arnel, Arnel. Simon smiled faintly, then did something unexpected. He reached over and slammed the golden buzzer. The golden confetti exploded across the stage, showering Arnel in light. He dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, clutching his guitar as tears streamed down his face. The host ran up to him, helping him stand as the audience screamed and clapped. Simon walked up to the stage, which he rarely did. He extended his hand to Arnel. The cameras zoomed in as the two shook hands. You just made history, Simon said. Arnel, still crying, whispered, thank you, sir. I just wanted my father to hear me. Simon smiled. He will. The golden confetti sparkled around them like stardust. After the show aired that night, the performance went viral instantly. The video spread like wildfire across social media. Comments flooded in from all over the world, from Filipinos abroad, from musicians, from people who had been moved by the power of a son's love. Within 24 hours, the clip titled, Freddie Aguilar's Hidden Son Sings, Anak, Golden Buzzer Moment, hit 20 million views. People wrote messages saying it was one of the most emotional performances in talent show history. In one of those millions of viewers, was Freddie Aguilar himself. He sat alone in his home, eyes fixed on the screen. At first, he thought it was just another cover of his song. But as he listened, as he heard the trembling voice, saw the young man's face, and recognized the familiar features, he froze. His eyes filled with tears. He whispered, that's my son. The next day, the story dominated headlines. Freddie Aguilar finds his lost son through a talent show performance. Reporters rushed to confirm it. Freddie released a statement saying, I had no idea I had a son. But when I saw him, when I heard his voice, I knew. The blood doesn't lie, music doesn't lie. Days later, during the semifinals of Pilipinas Got Talent, Arnel stood backstage again. He didn't know what to expect, only that he wanted to sing again. The host announced, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, something truly special is about to happen. Arnel Aguilar returns, and he's not alone. The lights dimmed. Arnel walked out with his guitar, looking humble as always. But this time, another man walked from the other side of the stage, Freddie Aguilar himself. The crowd went wild. People screamed, cheered, cried. Simon stood up in surprise, smiling broadly. Freddie walked up to Arnel, paused, then placed a hand on his shoulder. The two looked at each other, father and son, tears in both their eyes. Freddie whispered into the mic, I found my son. The audience broke into applause again, louder than before. Simon shouted from the judges' table, this is what music is about. Freddie smiled. Music brought us together. Tonight, we'll sing not just for the judges, but for every broken family out there that needs healing. The two sat side by side. Freddie played the opening chords of Anak, and Arnel joined in. Their voices blended perfectly, one seasoned by time, the other raw with emotion. The father's deep tone met the son's youthful resonance, creating something magical. As they sang, the audience swayed, some hugging each other, others crying openly. The camera panned to Simon Cowell, who had his hand on his chest, visibly emotional. When they finished, the room erupted once again. The father and son stood, holding each other tightly. The confetti fell once more, this time not from the golden buzzer, but from the production team who wanted to honor the moment. Simon walked up to them, visibly moved. "I've judged shows for over 20 years, he said, and I've never seen anything like this. Music just healed a family in front of our eyes." Freddie turned to Simon. "Thank you for giving my son a stage to be heard. I almost lost him forever." Simon replied, "You didn't lose him. You just hadn't heard him yet." The crowd cheered again. Cameras flashed. That night became one of the most watched talent show moments in history. After the show, Arnel and Freddie sat together backstage. No cameras, no lights, just father and son. Freddie took Arnel's hands and said, "I owe you a lifetime of apologies." Arnel smiled softly. "You don't owe me anything, Dad. You gave me music. That was enough." Freddie laughed through tears. "You sing better than I did at your age." Arnel grinned. "Maybe it runs in the blood." They hugged again, this time longer, more real. Simon later shared the video on his social media with the caption, "This is why I do what I do." The power of truth and music in one moment. The video crossed 100 million views within weeks. News outlets around the world covered it. It became a story not just about talent, but about forgiveness, destiny, and the invisible threads that connect family. Months later, Arnel released his first original song, a collaboration with his father titled, "Return Home." It became a massive hit, reaching the top charts not only in the Philippines but across Asia. The lyrics spoke of reunion, understanding, and second chances. At the launch concert, Simon Cowell made a surprise appearance. When asked why he flew all the way to Manila, he said, "Because I wanted to see the moment music completed its circle." On stage that night, as thousands of fans waved lights in the air, Freddie introduced his son with pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, I once wrote a song called, Anak. It was for a child I never met. Tonight, I sing it again, with the man it was always meant for." The audience cheered wildly as father and son embraced under a golden spotlight. When they began to sing, the crowd sang with them. It was no longer just a song. It was history repeating, but this time, with love and forgiveness. Simon stood in the audience, his eyes glistening as he watched the two generations of Aguilars sing together. When the final note ended, the applause lasted nearly 10 minutes. Freddie turned to the audience and said, "Love always finds its way back home, even if it takes a lifetime." That moment became immortalized in television history. The performance won multiple awards and became the most replayed video in talent show archives. But more than fame or recognition, it gave people hope. It showed the world that music can do what words alone cannot, heal broken hearts and reunite souls. Years later, in an interview, Simon was asked about the most unforgettable moment of his judging career. Without hesitation, he said, "The day Freddie Aguilar met his son. I've seen stars rise and fall, but that day, I saw something greater. I saw humanity." Arnel continued to sing, not for fame, but to inspire others who had lost someone or felt forgotten. His story became a message of perseverance, faith, and the belief that love can echo through music, even across generations. And somewhere in the quiet nights, under the same stars that once guided Freddie Aguilar's melodies, a son now sang alongside his father, the missing piece finally found, the legacy complete. Because sometimes, the greatest stage isn't just the one with bright lights and cameras, it's the one where hearts finally meet again. And on that unforgettable night on Pilipinas Got Talent, the world didn't just witness a performance, it witnessed a miracle written in music, sung from the soul of a son who just wanted his father to hear him, and a father who finally did.